Daniel was not a soldier. He was not a leader or an explorer. He was a simple technician who knew how to fix broken engines, repair communication lines, and check the systems of the colony ship. That morning, when his crew landed near the trade outpost, Daniel expected another quiet day of small repairs. He carried a small toolkit and walked slowly through the dust-filled streets, looking for any job that needed his hands. The outpost itself was busy. Merchants from different planets sold food, tools, and rare stones. Humans had been coming here for trade for only a short time, and many aliens still stared at them with curiosity. Some were tall and covered with silver skin, others had wide dark eyes, and some had wings folded neatly on their backs. Daniel felt small among them, but he walked calmly, used to being looked at. Suddenly, a loud sound shook the ground. It was not thunder. It was something sharper, heavier. The sky cracked open with streaks of light as ships fired at each other above. People in the outpost began to shout and run. Traders grabbed their goods, guards rushed to the walls, and parents held their children close. Daniel froze for a moment, watching the strange ships in the sky. He had no weapon, no armor, and no idea who was fighting. All he knew was that he had to stay alive. He turned into a side street to find safety, but his ears caught a different sound, a small, desperate cry. It was a child's voice, faint but clear. Daniel stopped, his heart racing. He looked around, trying to follow it. The sound came from behind a half-broken structure where smoke rose in thin clouds. Without thinking, Daniel ran toward it. There, under pieces of stone and metal, a young girl was trapped. She was small, no older than 10, with dark hair tangled around her face. Her arm was pinned under a heavy beam, and her eyes were wide with fear. She tried to push the weight away, but her strength was too little. Daniel dropped his toolkit and rushed forward. "It's okay," he said quickly, his voice steady, though his own hands trembled. "I'll get you out." The beam was heavy. Daniel pushed once and failed. He tried again, digging his feet into the ground. With all his strength, he lifted just enough to pull the girl's arm free. She gasped, her eyes filling with tears, but she did not cry out again. Daniel slid the beam aside and helped her sit up. "You're safe now," he said softly. "Can you walk?" She nodded weakly, though her legs shook. Daniel noticed scratches on her arms and a cut on her forehead, but nothing too deep. He pulled a cloth from his pocket and tied it gently over the wound. The child looked at him, her eyes wide with both pain and surprise. Another explosion shook the street. Dust rained down from the walls. Daniel knew they had to move fast. He lifted the girl into his arms, ignoring his own aching muscles. Step by step, he carried her through the narrow street, trying to avoid the falling stones. As he moved closer to the main square, he saw alien guards rushing in his direction. Their armor shone with dark blue light, and their tall forms carried long weapons. For a moment, Daniel thought they might attack him. He held the girl closer, ready to protect her with his own body. But then, something unexpected happened. The guards froze when they saw the child in his arms. Their weapons lowered instantly. Their eyes widened, not in anger, but in shock. One of them spoke quickly in their own language, then switched to broken human speech. "The child, you saved her," Daniel frowned, confused. "She was trapped. I couldn't leave her there." The guards bowed their heads slightly, a gesture Daniel did not understand. They rushed forward, not toward him, but toward the girl. Gently, they reached out, and the child smiled weakly at them, though she did not leave Daniel's arms. In that moment, Daniel realized she was not just any child. She was someone important, someone these alien guards cared for deeply. The way they looked at her was not the way common soldiers looked at a stranger, it was the way loyal protectors looked at a person of high value. Before he could ask questions, more guards arrived. They formed a protective circle around him and the girl. One of them spoke again, his tone urgent but respectful. "Come. The Queen must see you." Daniel blinked. "The Queen?" The guard nodded firmly. "You saved her daughter. You must come." Daniel's steps slowed. His mind raced with questions, but he could not find the right words. He had saved the girl without knowing who she was. He had acted only because it was the right thing to do. But now, it seemed his action had pulled him into something far larger than himself. As the guards led him through the crowded outpost, Daniel held the girl close. Her small hand gripped his shirt tightly, as if she did not want to let go. And for reasons he could not explain, he felt the same. That was the moment Daniel's life began to change, though he did not yet know how deeply. Daniel walked through the outpost surrounded by tall alien guards. Their blue armor shone even in the smoke-filled air, and their eyes scanned every corner as if danger could appear at any second. In his arms, the young girl rested quietly. She no longer cried, but she held tightly onto his shirt as if she feared he might disappear. The streets were still crowded with frightened merchants and travelers. Many stepped aside when they saw the guards, whispering among themselves. Some bowed their heads. Daniel felt the weight of their eyes on him, and for the first time he wondered if carrying the child had placed him in the middle of something too large for him to handle. He wanted to ask the girl her name, but before he could speak, one of the guards stopped in front of a large gate made of black stone. Two more guards opened it with a heavy push, and the group stepped into a wide hall filled with banners and carved walls. The place looked nothing like the outpost Daniel had seen outside. This was no market, it was a royal hall built for power. At the far end sat a tall figure on a raised seat. She wore flowing silver robes and a crown of dark metal, her eyes sharp and steady. Even before anyone spoke, Daniel understood who she was. This was the Queen. The guards dropped to one knee. Daniel froze, unsure of what to do. He was a simple technician, bowing before royalty had never been part of his life. Still, he lowered his head slightly out of respect. The young girl in his arms shifted, her small voice breaking the silence. "Mother," she whispered. The Queen stood at once. Her calm face softened, and she crossed the hall with quick steps. Daniel felt her presence like a wave of energy. She reached out, and the girl lifted her arms toward her. Daniel carefully handed the child over. Relief filled the Queen's expression as she held her daughter close. She checked the girl's forehead and whispered something in her own language, gentle and full of care. For a moment, Daniel almost forgot this was the leader of a powerful alien clan. She looked only like a mother reunited with her child. Then her eyes turned to Daniel. The softness disappeared, replaced by something sharper. The Queen studied him in silence, as if weighing every detail about him: his plain clothes, his tired face, his human form. Daniel shifted uneasily under her gaze. Finally, she spoke in clear words, her voice steady and commanding. "You saved my daughter." Daniel nodded quickly. "I only did what anyone would have done. She was trapped. I could not leave her." The Queen tilted her head slightly. "Not everyone runs toward danger for a stranger. Many would have looked away. But you did not." Daniel said nothing. He had no answer for her. He had not acted for reward or honor. He had only seen a child in danger and moved without thinking. The Queen turned to the guards. "This human carried her out with his own hands," she declared. Her voice echoed in the hall. "By our law, a life saved binds the savior to the bloodline. He belongs to this clan." Daniel's eyes widened. "Belongs." The guards lowered their heads again, as if the words were final. Murmurs spread through the hall. Daniel looked around, confusion heavy in his chest. He had not asked for this. He had not even known who the child was. The Queen stepped closer. She was taller than him, her presence overwhelming. "What is your name, Human. Daniel, he said quietly. Daniel, the queen repeated, as if testing the sound of it. From this day, you are bound to my clan. You saved what is most precious to me. You are no longer only of your people, you are of mine as well. The young girl looked at him from her mother's arms. Her small smile carried trust, the same trust she had shown when he freed her from the rubble. Daniel felt his chest tighten. But still, doubt filled his mind. What did it mean to belong to a clan not his own? Would his fellow humans understand? Would they fear this bond? He had no answer, and the queen gave him no time to ask. Tomorrow, she said, her tone final, you will stand before the council. They will see the human who carried the princess to safety. They will hear my words and witness your bond. From then, no one may question your place. The guards moved as if to lead him away, but Daniel lifted a hand nervously. Wait. I did not do this for honor or bond. I only wanted to help her. The queen's sharp gaze softened once more. And that, she said slowly, is why you are worthy. Remember, Daniel, a bond is not a chain. It is a bridge. You did not seek it, yet it found you. That is the way of fate. Her words stayed with him as the guards guided him to a smaller chamber where he would rest until the council meeting. Daniel sat alone on a stone bench, his thoughts restless. Hours ago, he had been only a technician, carrying a toolkit and looking for simple work. Now, the queen herself declared him part of her clan. He closed his eyes, the image of the girl's small smile still clear in his memory. Whatever path lay ahead, Daniel knew this was only the beginning. The night passed slowly for Daniel. He lay awake on the stone bench, staring at the ceiling of the chamber. Sleep refused to come. His mind kept circling around the same questions. Why had the queen spoken of a bond? What did it truly mean to belong to her clan? And what would his fellow humans think if they heard of this? At dawn, a guard entered. His armor reflected the early light. The council is ready, he said. The queen waits. Daniel stood, adjusting his plain shirt. He felt unprepared for such a moment. He was no diplomat, no speaker. He was just a technician who had followed his instincts. But he could not turn away now. The guard led him through tall corridors until they reached the great council hall. The hall was larger than the throne room he had seen before. It was built in a circular shape, with high walls lined with glowing patterns. At the center stood a round platform. Around it, seated in curved rows, were dozens of figures, leaders, advisors, and warriors of the queen's clan. Their eyes followed Daniel as he stepped forward, each gaze heavy with judgment. At the highest seat sat Queen Malin, her daughter by her side. The young girl looked healthier now, her forehead wrapped neatly in white cloth. She smiled when she saw Daniel, and for a brief moment, his fear softened. A deep voice filled the hall. One of the council members, tall and broad-shouldered, stood. Queen Malin, is it true that this human is now tied to our bloodline? Can an outsider be accepted so easily? Murmurs followed. Some nodded in agreement, others remained silent. Daniel felt the tension in the air. The queen raised her hand, and the whispers stopped. It is true. He carried my daughter from the jaws of death. Our law is clear. A life saved binds the savior to the clan. Do you doubt the law? The council member lowered his head slightly. We do not doubt the law, but we question the human. What strength does he have? What wisdom? What loyalty? Can a man who does not know our ways truly belong here? Daniel's chest tightened. He wanted to speak, but his voice caught in his throat. He felt as if the whole hall waited for his answer. The queen turned her eyes to him. Speak, Daniel, she said calmly. Tell them why you acted as you did. Daniel took a breath. His voice trembled at first, but he forced himself to continue. I saw a child in danger. That is all. I did not know she was a princess. I did not think of reward or law. I only thought she needed help, and I could give it. So I did. The hall was quiet. Some of the council members exchanged looks. One of them, an elder with silver markings on his skin, leaned forward. Your words are simple, human. Too simple. Many beings in this galaxy speak of honor, yet act for gain. Are you different? Daniel met the elder's eyes. His voice grew steadier. I cannot speak for others. I only know myself. Where I come from, we are taught that a life is worth saving, no matter whose it is. I did not choose this bond, but if your law says it is mine, then I will respect it. The elder sat back, his expression unreadable. Queen Malin rose from her seat. You hear him, she declared. He did not act for glory. He acted for life itself. And that is what makes him worthy. But not all were convinced. Another voice rang out from the council. If he is to stand among us, let him be tested. Words are easy. Deeds are harder. The hall stirred with agreement. Daniel's stomach tightened. He had faced broken engines, not trials. He had solved problems with tools, not with strength. Yet he understood their doubts. He was a stranger to them, and strangers are not trusted quickly. The queen considered for a moment, then nodded. Very well. If the council demands it, he will be tested. Tomorrow, Daniel will face the trials of the clan. Let his actions prove what his words cannot. The guards struck the floor with the ends of their spears, sealing the decision. Daniel bowed his head slightly, though his thoughts raced. He had never asked for this place among them, but now it was his path. He looked toward the young princess, who gave him a small nod of encouragement. Somehow, her quiet trust gave him strength. When the council was dismissed, Daniel walked with the queen down a side hall. He dared to speak. Your Majesty, these trials, what are they? The queen's steps slowed. Her eyes softened as she looked at him. They will not be easy. Some will test your body, others your mind, and others your heart. Many born into this clan struggle with them. But do not fear. You have already shown what many forget, that compassion is also a strength. Daniel nodded slowly. He was not sure if compassion alone could carry him through, but he would try. That evening, back in his chamber, he sat in silence. The outpost outside still carried the scars of battle. Smoke rose faintly in the distance. Daniel closed his eyes and thought again of the moment he had lifted the heavy beam from the child. He had not known then that it would lead here, to this hall, to this promise of trials. He felt fear, yes, but also something else, resolve. He had been placed in this position by chance, but now he would see it through. If the clan wanted proof, he would give it. Not for glory, not for law, but for the girl whose life he had saved, and for the bond that had already begun to grow. The morning sun filtered through tall windows of carved stone as Daniel was led to the training ground. It was a wide courtyard, surrounded by walls marked with ancient symbols of the clan. A group of guards stood waiting, their eyes sharp and curious. Some watched him with doubt, others with quiet interest. Queen Malin and her daughter were present as well, standing at the far side beneath a canopy. The young princess waved at Daniel, her smile full of warmth. It gave him courage, even as his stomach felt tight with nerves. A tall commander stepped forward. His armor was dark and heavy, and his voice carried authority. Human, he said, the council has demanded that you prove your worth. You will face 3 trials. The first will test your endurance, the second your mind, and the third your heart. Only then will the council judge your place among us. Daniel swallowed hard, but he nodded. I will try. The commander raised a hand, and 2 guards brought a large stone block forward. It was nearly as tall as Daniel himself. The commander gestured toward it. "Lift this and carry it across the yard. Show us your strength." Daniel looked at the block. His arms already felt weak just imagining the weight. He knew he could not match the physical power of these warriors. But he remembered the Queen's words, "Compassion is also a strength." Perhaps this trial was not only about force. He crouched by the block, studying it. His eyes caught a long wooden beam leaning against the wall nearby, used by workers for building repairs. Slowly, Daniel picked it up, placed it under the edge of the stone, and pressed down. With effort, the block tilted upward. Gasps rose from the crowd. Using the beam as leverage, Daniel slid the block onto a wheeled cart that stood forgotten in the corner. Then, pushing with all his strength, he rolled the block across the yard. It was not easy. His arms shook, sweat ran down his face, and the cart squeaked loudly, but step by step, he reached the far side. The guards exchanged surprised glances. The commander narrowed his eyes but gave a short nod. He used his mind where his body was weak, the elder guard muttered. "That is something." The Queen's lips curved slightly. "That is human," she said. Daniel stood catching his breath, but he felt a spark of pride. He had passed the first trial. The commander spoke again. "The second trial is one of memory and thought. You must solve the pattern." From a table, a guard brought forward a metal board covered with shifting tiles. Strange symbols glowed across its surface. The tiles clicked and moved, changing shapes into broken patterns. "This is a puzzle of our ancestors," the commander explained. "Few outsiders understand it. Solve it, and you prove your mind is sharp." Daniel sat before the board. The symbols meant nothing to him, yet he noticed how they repeated in certain places. He watched carefully as the tiles clicked, then reached out and began moving them. Each time he shifted one, the pattern grew clearer. Slowly, he realized it was not about knowing the symbols but about finding balance. Minutes passed. The hall grew silent. At last, Daniel placed the final tile, and the board lit with a steady glow. The puzzle was complete. A murmur spread among the guards. The commander's eyes narrowed again, but this time with respect. "He sees beyond what is shown," he said. Daniel exhaled in relief. 2 trials done. Only one remained. The commander's voice grew deeper. "The last trial is of the heart. You will face a choice. Choose rightly, and you will prove your spirit." 2 guards stepped forward, each holding a small cage. In one was a bright-winged bird, its feathers shining in the sunlight. In the other was a small, injured animal, weak and trembling. The commander pointed. "You may free only one. The beautiful bird will fly high, admired by all. The weak creature may live if saved, but it will bring you no honor. Choose." Daniel looked at the cages. His heart ached. The bird was strong and full of life, the creature was weak and suffering. Many in the clan watched eagerly, waiting to see which path he would take. He did not hesitate long. Daniel walked to the cage of the weak animal and lifted the door gently. The small creature stumbled out, trembling, and Daniel scooped it into his hands. He held it close, whispering softly, "You deserve a chance." The crowd was silent. Some frowned, others whispered in confusion. Why had he not chosen the strong bird? Queen Malin stepped forward, her eyes warm. "He chose compassion over glory. That is the heart of one who values life above honor." The commander lowered his head in respect. "The trials are complete. The human has shown his worth." The guards struck their spears against the ground, the sound echoing across the yard. Daniel stood, still holding the small creature, unsure of what to say. He had not thought about impressing anyone. He had only done what felt right. The Queen's daughter ran forward, her eyes bright with joy. "I knew you would pass," she said, her small hand reaching for his. Daniel smiled at her, feeling a strange warmth in his chest. The trials had ended, but Daniel knew this was only one step. The bond between him and the clan had grown stronger. Yet he also knew whispers of doubt still lingered in the council. Not everyone would accept him so easily. Still, for the first time since this began, Daniel felt he belonged at least in the eyes of the queen and her daughter. The trials were complete, but peace did not follow. Even as Daniel was led back to the council hall, he could feel the unease in the air. Some guards gave him respectful nods, but others looked at him with doubt, their eyes sharp and questioning. He understood. A single day of tests could not erase centuries of tradition. To many of them, he was still only a human outsider. That evening, the queen called for a private gathering. Daniel sat at a long table beside her daughter, while the queen spoke with several trusted advisors. Maps were spread before them, showing the lands beyond the outpost. "The shadows move," the queen said in a low, steady voice. "Our enemies grow bold. They saw weakness in today's trial. They will strike soon, and they will strike here." Daniel leaned forward. "Because of me?" The queen nodded. "Partly. They see your presence as a crack in our rule. They believe I have broken tradition by binding an outsider to the clan. They will use this as an excuse to attack." The words weighed heavily on Daniel's chest. He had never wished to be the cause of conflict. Yet he also knew the queen spoke the truth. He remembered the way some council members had looked at him, half anger, half fear. "Then we must be ready," the queen said. "If they come, we will meet them." The princess reached for Daniel's hand under the table, her small fingers squeezing his. "You saved me once," she whispered. "You can help save them too." Daniel gave a small smile, though inside he felt uncertain. He was no soldier. But he also knew he could not turn away. The next day came with gray clouds and heavy air, as if the sky itself knew a storm was near. The outpost grew tense. Guards patrolled the walls, traders whispered of danger, and people hurried to gather supplies. Daniel walked among them, offering help where he could, fixing broken doors, repairing small devices, and calming frightened families. Though his skills were simple, the people began to look at him differently. He was no longer just the human who had saved a child, he was the human who worked beside them in their fear. By midday, the storm arrived. Enemy ships appeared on the horizon, dark and sharp, moving like blades through the sky. Alarms rang through the outpost. Soldiers rushed to their stations, weapons raised. The queen stood tall at the center of the square, her presence calm and unshaken. Daniel stood near her, his heart pounding. The first strike shook the ground, sending dust into the air. Enemy forces poured toward the walls, their banners marked with red symbols. Their voices rose in battle cries. The defenders answered with shields and fire. The air filled with noise, the clash of metal and the crack of energy. Daniel felt small among the chaos, but he could not stand still. He remembered the maps the queen had shown him and the weak points she had spoken of. He ran toward the southern gate, where only a few guards stood, struggling to hold back a growing wave of attackers. "Reinforce this gate," Daniel shouted, pointing to the nearby tower. His voice surprised even himself. The guards looked at him, uncertain, but then obeyed. Together, they dragged heavy crates and beams to block the entrance. Daniel used ropes and pulleys he found in a workshop to strengthen the barrier. The attackers struck again, but the gate held firm. News of his quick thinking spread. More guards began to follow his directions. Daniel climbed to the wall, pointing out weak spots and calling for repairs. Where others saw only broken wood and falling stones, he saw solutions: a beam to be shifted, a rope to be tightened, a tool to be used. The battle raged on, but the defenders no longer fought in fear. They fought with unity. At the heart of the outpost, the queen herself led the charge, her blade flashing as she held the line. Her daughter watched from safety, her eyes wide, but her gaze never left Daniel as he worked tirelessly across the field. Hours passed. The enemy pressed hard, but the outpost did not fall. Daniel's hands were blistered, his clothes torn, but he kept moving, kept finding ways to hold the defense. At last, as the sun dipped low, the enemy began to retreat. Their ships pulled away, their banners lowered. The storm had broken, and the outpost still stood. Exhausted, Daniel collapsed against the wall, breathing heavily. Around him, guards cheered, lifting their weapons in triumph. The queen raised her hand, her voice carrying across the square. "Today we stood together," she declared. "And we did not break. This victory belongs to us all, but it was guided by the courage of one who was once called outsider. Daniel has shown us the strength of human spirit, the strength of unity." The people shouted his name, their voices rising in a wave. Daniel lowered his head, humbled and overwhelmed. He had not fought with a weapon, yet he had fought all the same. And for the first time, he felt not only the weight of the bond but also the meaning of it. The queen's daughter ran to him, throwing her arms around him with a bright smile. "I knew you would help us," she said. Daniel returned the smile, though his body ached. He knew the storm was not over. The enemies would come again, stronger, and the council would still question him. But for now, they had survived. For now, they had hope. And in that hope, Daniel found his place among them. The outposts celebrated their victory, but Daniel could sense the unease that still lingered in the air. Fires were lit in the square, songs were sung, and children laughed again, yet beneath the joy was a quiet fear. Everyone knew the enemy had only retreated to gather strength. They would return, and when they did, the next attack would be far greater. Daniel sat on the edge of a low wall, his hands still marked with blisters from the long battle. The queen's daughter sat beside him, humming softly as she traced circles in the dust with her finger. "You fixed the walls," she said brightly. "You saved the south gate. Mother says the clan respects you now." Daniel gave a small smile, though his eyes were tired. "Respect is good. But walls alone will not stop what's coming." The girl tilted her head. "Then what will?" Daniel did not answer right away. His mind was already turning with thoughts, ideas forming like pieces of a puzzle. He had seen how the enemy moved, how their ships struck in formation. He had noticed patterns in their attacks, and he knew they would use those patterns again. Later that evening, the queen called a council. The chamber was crowded, every leader and warrior present. Daniel was asked to join, though some members still looked at him with suspicion. He stood near the queen, his plain clothes a sharp contrast to their shining robes and armor. "The enemy gathers," one of the council members warned. "Our scouts say their fleet has doubled. They will return within days." A heavy silence filled the hall. Then the queen turned to Daniel. "You watched them closely. What do you see?" Daniel hesitated. All eyes were on him. But he remembered the trial, the puzzle board with glowing tiles. He had solved it not by knowing the symbols, but by finding balance. Perhaps this battle was the same. "They fight with strength," he said slowly, "but their strength has a shape. They strike in lines, their ships moving together like one hand. If we break that shape, their strength will scatter." "And how would you break it?" the elder council member asked. Daniel pointed to the map on the table. "Here. The canyon east of the outpost. It is narrow. If we draw their ships inside, their formation will break. Their numbers will mean nothing. We can strike them from the cliffs and turn their strength against them." Murmurs filled the chamber. Some nodded, impressed, while others frowned. "You speak like a commander," one council member said, "yet you are no warrior. What if you are wrong?" Daniel met his gaze. Then I will stand at the front. If I am wrong, I will fall with the others. But if I am right, we may all survive. The queen studied him for a long moment. Then she raised her hand. So be it. We will prepare for the canyon. The next 2 days were filled with work. Soldiers moved stones and built hidden platforms along the cliffs. Daniel worked beside them, guiding the placement of ropes, wheels, and traps. He showed them how to build collapsible barriers that could block the canyon at the right moment. His hands were cut and bruised, but he did not rest. The people no longer saw him as an outsider giving orders, they saw him as one of them, working tirelessly for their survival. At last, the day came. The sky darkened with the shadow of enemy ships. Their banners of red stretched across the horizon. The queen stood tall at the front of her forces, her blade gleaming. Daniel stood beside her, his heart racing but his mind clear. The enemy fleet approached, their ships diving into the canyon just as Daniel predicted. Their formation stretched thin, their lines breaking against the narrow stone walls. At that moment, Daniel shouted the signal. From the cliffs, stones rolled down, crashing into the ships. Hidden traps snapped into place, blocking their retreat. Archers and gunners fired from above, striking the broken enemy line. Chaos spread through the canyon. The enemy shouted in confusion as their order turned to disorder. The queen raised her blade high and charged with her warriors. The clash rang through the air, but this time the defenders held the advantage. Daniel ran along the edge of the cliffs, pulling ropes, releasing counterweights, and shouting directions. Each trap worked as planned, each move turning the canyon into a prison for the enemy. The battle raged, but slowly, surely, the tide shifted. At last, with their ships destroyed and their warriors scattered, the enemy began to flee. The canyon fell silent except for the cheers of the queen's clan. The queen raised her hand, her voice steady and strong. Victory is ours. The people shouted, their voices carrying across the canyon walls. Daniel sank to the ground, exhausted. His arms shook, his chest burned, but a deep relief filled him. He had gambled everything on the plan, and it had worked. Not through strength of arms, but through careful thought and trust in those around him. The queen approached, her daughter beside her. The girl's eyes shone with pride. "I told you," she whispered. "You could help us." Queen Malin placed a hand on Daniel's shoulder. "Today you were more than a guest, more than a savior of my child. Today you stood as one of us. This bond is no longer law alone, it is truth." Daniel bowed his head, humbled. He had not sought honor, yet it had found him. And though the future still held many unknowns, he knew he had taken his place in something greater than himself. The decisive moment had passed, and he had chosen not fear, but courage. And that choice had changed everything. The canyon was quiet now. Smoke rose from the wreckage of the enemy ships, and the scent of burnt stone and metal hung in the air. The defenders stood on the cliffs and at the canyon floor, some resting against broken walls, others tending to wounds. The battle was over, but the memory of it would remain for a long time. Daniel sat on a fallen stone, his chest still heavy with exhaustion. His hands were scratched, his clothes torn, but he felt lighter than he had in many days. He watched as the clan gathered together, lifting their banners high. For the first time, he saw not fear in their eyes, but hope. The queen walked through the crowd, her armor marked by battle yet her step steady and proud. Her daughter ran ahead of her, laughing as if the world had been reborn. When they reached Daniel, the queen stopped, and the people around her grew silent. "This day will not be forgotten," she said. Her voice carried through the canyon, strong and clear. "We were pushed to the edge of despair. Yet because of courage, because of wisdom, because of the hand of one who came to us as a stranger, we stand victorious." The crowd cheered, but the queen raised her hand again for silence. She looked at Daniel, her gaze steady. You saved my daughter without knowing who she was. You saved my clan without seeking reward. And now, you have led us to triumph when all seemed lost. By our law, you belong to us. But today I say more, you are not only bound by law. You are bound by honor, by choice, and by blood. From this day forward, you are of our clan. The people lifted their voices again, shouting Daniel's name. He felt a wave of emotion rise in him. He had never wished for glory, never asked to belong to a royal house or a people of warriors. Yet here he was, accepted not as an outsider, but as one of them. The queen's daughter took his hand and whispered, "Now you cannot leave us." Daniel smiled gently. "I do not think I want to." That night, the clan lit great fires in the square of the outpost. Music filled the air, drums and strings weaving with the sound of laughter. Food was shared freely, and children ran through the crowd with ribbons in their hair. For a moment, the world felt whole again. Daniel sat near the fire with the queen and her daughter. He listened to the songs, the stories of old battles, the voices of a people who had nearly lost everything but now spoke with joy. He felt the warmth of belonging, something he had not known for a long time. But beneath the celebration, his thoughts were calm and steady. He knew the enemy might return one day. Victory had been won, but peace was never certain. Yet he also knew that fear could not guide his steps. He had seen what courage and unity could achieve. He believed in it now more than ever. Later, as the firelight flickered against the stone walls, the queen spoke quietly to him. "When you first came here, I did not trust you. I thought you were only a wanderer who had stumbled into matters too great for him. But you showed me that greatness does not come from where one is born. It comes from the choices one makes." Daniel bowed his head. "I only did what was right." She smiled faintly. "That is what makes it great." The queen rose and raised her cup to the people. "Tonight we celebrate victory. Tomorrow we begin to rebuild. But always, we will remember this day. Always, we will honor those who stood when hope seemed lost." The cheers rose again, and Daniel felt the sound sink deep into his heart. When the night grew late, he stepped away from the fire and climbed a low hill beyond the outpost. From there, he could see the stars above, bright and countless. He thought of his old life, the quiet days when he was only one man wandering the world. That life seemed far away now, as if it belonged to another person. Here, under these stars, he had found a new path. He had not only saved a child, not only defended a people, but he had discovered something greater, the strength of belonging, the power of standing together. As the wind moved through the grass, Daniel whispered softly, "This is home now." The queen's daughter's laughter carried faintly from below, mixed with the music of the clan. The fires burned bright, a promise against the dark. Daniel stood there for a long time, watching the sky, knowing that whatever the future held, he would not face it alone. The clan was his family now, their fight his fight, their hope his hope. And so the stranger who had once walked into their land by chance had become a part of their story, a part of their legacy. And that legacy would live on, stronger than fear, brighter than the shadows of war.